Rogue Sun, issue number 1 from Image Comics. So here we go. This is the character from the Radiant Black Supermassive crossover. This is Rogue Sun. This is the very first issue. Because for some reason, the Image decided that it would be a good idea to do a crossover with two characters who no one has ever seen before because their series hasn't been released yet. Well, now one of them has been released. So this is Rogue Sun. And we start off with Rogue Sun fighting some kind of hooded figure that reminds me a little bit of Doctor Doom. And they're fighting over New Orleans. This is Rogue Sun's hometown. And to be honest, that's kind of a cool location. I've always been fascinated by New Orleans. I've never been there myself, but I've read about it and stuff like that. And it always seemed like an interesting place for like a superhero. I know Shadow Man takes place in that in New Orleans. Obviously because of the whole voodoo stuff. But yeah, I'm like, all right, that's a pretty cool setting to have your superhero in. And he's a well-known superhero. We have him fighting, and we see like streaks of fire and stuff in the sky, and some of the people notice it. They're like, oh my god, it's that superhero guy, right? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of weird to see him this far out, but that's him. It's like, should we be running? No, it's fine. This stuff happens all the time. It'll be fine. He can take care of himself. So yeah, he's a well-known superhero. People are used to seeing him all the time. His name is Marcus Bell. And yeah, like I said, he's the character from Supermassive. And he chases after the foe that he's been fighting. And he finds this like abandoned warehouse with a bunch of mannequins. And he's trying to find this guy. Like he's like, where are you? Like there's no point in hiding. You can't hide from me. And the guy is taunting him, calling him, saying, your time is up, Marcus Bell. He's like, well, you know my name, but I don't know yours. That seems like a little unfair. And then all of a sudden, the guy shows up and he blasts Rogue Sun. And Rogue Sun's armor starts breaking and falling apart. And then we see him and he grabs Rogue Sun. He basically says, your time is up. This is a pretty interesting line. I am all of your sins made flesh, Marcus. And I am the end of your story. And there's a huge explosion. And then we see Rogue Sun, and he dies. And I was like, all right, so you introduced this character in Supermassive only to kill him off a couple of pages into his very first issue. All right, that was interesting. The other interesting thing is the fact that he's like in his 40s in this issue. Yet in Supermassive, he seemed to be a lot younger. Or at least that's the way he came across. He came across like someone in their 20s. So, is it supposed to take? Was Supermassive in Return Radiant Black? Is that in the past? Does this series take place like in the future, 20 years in the future, or is it just the writing seemed off or whatever? I don't know. Maybe it was just the artwork, but he came across like a dude in his 20s in Supermassive. And yet here he's like in his 40s. I also think this is another interesting line. It says, when the night falls, a sun will rise. And then we get introduced to his son, Dylan. And his son is kind of a bully. We start off with him putting his quote-unquote best friend in the locker and pretty much threatening him like, I need you to understand, I need you to take care of my chemistry homework. And in return, I will find you a date for the prom and I'll keep the bullies off your back. And kid in the locker is like, bullies? Like, you're the only one that picks on me. So I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. It also looks like Dylan has women troubles. Like, apparently there's this girl that he likes and he did something to her and she kind of brushes him off. And then we see him go back home and we get the impression that his raising was pretty poor. He lives in a kind of crappy looking house. He doesn't really have any food to eat. The food that he does have is like moldy and old. And we see his mom, and his mom's crying. She's talking to this guy and basically informing the two of them that, hey, your father is dead. And Dylan doesn't care. He's like, your dad died in a car crash and the funeral already happened, but there's going to be a private reading for his will and we want you to be there. Do you have any questions? And Dylan's just like, yeah, when he died, was it instantly or did he like burn alive or drown? Like, what were his last moments excruciatingly painful? So we get the strong impression that Dylan hates the hell out of his dad. And you really can understand why, because he shows up on a few days later with his mom to his dad's house, and it turns out that his dad divorced his mom and then went and married another woman who was rich and had kids with that woman. So, yeah, while his dad was living it up with his new family, his old family was basically living in destitute, in a poor house with little food. And yeah, he's introduced to the new wife and the kids. And of course, Dylan doesn't really seem to get along with the kids. Well, the kids kind of started off first. Like, you don't look like our father. And he's like, I'll take that as a compliment. And then they sit down for the reading of the will. And Marcus gives everything, the house and all that stuff, to his wife and the new family. But the one thing, his most prized possession, the Sunstone, the item that gave him his power as a rogue son, the item that his new family wants, he gives it to Dylan instead. And of course, the kids are upset. Like, how the hell could you give the Sunstone and its power to this guy? But that was in the will, so Dylan now takes the power, and then he gets informed, your dad didn't die in an automobile accident. He was actually a mass vigilante. He was the rogue son, and his dying wish was that you take up his mantle. And Dylan's like, crap. Like, now he has this thrust upon him. So later that night, he's out on the front porch of his house, kind of staring at the stone, and his mom shows up, and he asks his mom, like, how long have you known? And she says, since always. Like, when I was a teenager, I was riding in a streetcar, and a drunk driver slammed into it, and I thought I was going to die, but then this knight in shining armor showed up and saved me and asked me out. 8 months later, we were married, and we were happy at first, but then, like, the responsibility of being a superhero and a father seemed like too much, and he left. And at first, I thought he left to protect us, but then, of course, that kind of fell out the window when he immediately remarried and started a new family. So, once again, not really painting the Marcus dude that we saw in Supermassive as all that great of a character. Kind of seems like a D-bag. And so, the mom obviously doesn't want Dylan to take the mantle. She's like, because immediately the Sunstone starts flashing. And she's like, it's the call. It means that the rogue son is needed. But just because the rogue son is calling, that doesn't mean you have to answer. I don't want that kind of life for you. Like, I know what it did to your father, and I don't want it, I don't want you to go through that same pain and stuff. And he's like, no, the thing is that I'm not my father. I'm going to be better than him. Like, I'm not going to be the loser that he was. I'm not going to be the guy who abandoned his family and stuff. I'm going to be the better man, and I'm going to be the better hero than he ever was. And I'm going to also keep this power because this is our golden ticket. With the superhero, being a superhero is like winning the lottery. We can now have a better lives because of this. We don't have to live in this crappy house and living paycheck to paycheck with no food in the fridge and stuff. We can be better now because we have this power. And so, yeah, he makes that promise. He makes a promise to be a better rogue son than his father, a better hero than his father. And I'm going to stop it there. There's more. Where, like I said, he answers the call, and he gets his first taste of going after a villain and stuff. But I'm not gonna spoil any of that stuff. I'll leave it for you guys to read it if you guys want to figure out what happens. I will say it's an interesting story. It was an interesting first issue. Weird that you introduced a character in the crossover and then immediately killed him off a couple of pages into this issue, into his very first issue, just to introduce a new hero. I mean, I always figured that it was going to be a son taking over his dad's powers, but I thought that the son taking over his dad's powers was the character that we saw in the beginning, which is the character that we saw in Supermassive. I thought it was like he was 20 years old or something like that. He was around, I thought he was going to be around Marshall's age, but it turns out he was actually in his 40s. So, yeah, I also find the fact that you have a superhero, the main character, who's kind of a bully. I think that's an interesting way to go about things. My guess would be that maybe he comes across as pretty cocky and stuff like that, and self-confident. And I'm guessing that after a few rounds of being a superhero, he's going to get that kind of knocked out of him. and maybe he's going to turn to the kid that he was bullying for help. And because of that, he's going to grow as a better person. And then maybe, yeah, I'm guessing there's also going to be the cliche of how he's going to learn to respect his father and stuff like that. Like he starts off hating his dad, but then after walking a mile in his shoes, he realizes his dad wasn't all that terrible. And I'm like, I kind of hope that you don't do that, because one is cliche, and two, even though your dad was a superhero, he was still kind of a dick. He still kind of abandoned you and your mom so that he can marry a new woman, and then he lived a life of wealth with this new family. The least he could have done was send you like child support, and I mean he was filthy rich. The least he could have done was made sure that you and your mom were at least taken care of, but he didn't even do that. So yeah, I hope he doesn't learn to like respect his dad. Maybe he's just like just use your, you know, all the anger you have on your against your dad to make yourself better, to improve yourself, to motivate yourself to be a better hero than he ever was. So I'm hoping that's the route that they go, and not the whole like, oh, you know what, maybe I was all wrong about my dad. But yeah, I'm also kind of interested about, again, like the fact that they went with the bully character. Because when I saw, you know, this bully character and then a kid locked in the locker, I was like, oh, it's going to be the kid, right? The kid's going to be the superhero. He's going to be bullied all his life, and then now all of a sudden he gets superpowers. It's going to be like Spider-Man all over again. But nope. So I was like, okay, I kind of like this. This is an interesting take. This is basically like, you know, making Flash Thompson, like, you know, the hero. What was he? The anti-Venom. So it's a nice, I don't want to say twist, because, you know, it's been done before, but it's not cliche. The cliche would have been going with the nerdy bullied kid as the hero. So to go with the actual bully as the hero, it's a nice change. And yeah, that's going to be my take. My theory is that he's going to realize he needs help, and then he turns to his quote-unquote best friend, which is the kid that he bullies. He's like, well, this kid's smart. Maybe this kid will be able to help me out and help me like discover my powers and what I need to do. And he can be like my oracle, my sidekick who doesn't actually fight with me, but rather regales me with information and stuff. So yeah, for a very first issue introducing a brand new character, I thought this wasn't that bad. It was interesting. I will say that I'm a little annoyed with the whole teen angst thing that we got from Dylan. I get the whole hating your dad and stuff like that, but yeah, there are a couple times where it comes across as angsty rather than I wish. There are also some moments where he becomes it's almost portrayed as apathetic as well, and I hope they lean more towards the apathetic and less towards the broody angst. Like I want the hero to be more like, I don't give a shit about my dad. Like, I don't care that he died. I don't care that he was a hero. Him being a hero doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the fact that he was a terrible father and a terrible husband to my mom. So yeah, I hope it goes in that route. But yeah, I'll say good start. I'm interested to see where it goes. I will definitely be checking out the next issue. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody. Later. So what'd you guys think of that video? I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe. Hit that bell for a notification. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't enjoy the video, thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next video is more to your liking. Feel free to check out the playlist that you guys see, and I hope to see you guys next time. Later.